What's up, Multiverse of Mayhem fans? Today, we're diving into one of the most interesting debates in DC history, and honestly, one that hits very differently today than it did when these movies first released, because we're not just asking which is better, we're asking something more nuanced, more long-term, and way more revealing. Which aged better, the DCeU or Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy? And to answer that properly, we're going to break this down across storytelling, tone, character arcs, consistency, visual longevity, and cultural impact, all based strictly on what's actually on screen. Let's start with the Dark Knight trilogy, beginning with Batman Begins. What immediately stands out is how intentionally grounded the film is. This isn't just a superhero origin story, it's structured as a character study of Bruce Wayne. The film spends a significant amount of time establishing his motivations, his training, and his psychological state before he even becomes Batman. Gotham City is presented as a crime-ridden but believable urban environment rather than a stylized comic book setting, and that grounded approach becomes the foundation for the entire trilogy. What's important about how this ages is that it doesn't rely on trends or spectacle. It relies on narrative structure and character development, which tend to hold up over time. Then we move into The Dark Knight, and this is where the trilogy elevates into something that goes beyond the superhero genre. The film functions primarily as a crime drama, with Batman operating within a larger moral and societal conflict. The Joker, portrayed by Heath Ledger, is not just a villain, but a thematic force representing chaos and unpredictability. The film's core tension revolves around ethical dilemmas, how far institutions and individuals are willing to go to maintain order. These themes are not tied to any specific era, which is a major reason the film continues to resonate. Even the action sequences are grounded in practical effects and real-world physics, which contributes to its longevity because it avoids the kind of heavy CGI that can become dated over time. Closing out the trilogy, The Dark Knight Rises expands the scale significantly while still maintaining the grounded tone established in the previous films. The story focuses on Bruce Wayne's physical and psychological decline, followed by his return and eventual conclusion as Batman. While the film has been debated in terms of pacing and structure, what matters in the context of aging is that it provides a definitive ending. Bruce Wayne's arc is completed, Gotham's story reaches resolution, and the trilogy ends as a fully contained narrative. There are no unresolved threads that depend on future installments, and that sense of closure is a major factor in how well it holds up over time. Now let's shift to the DC Extended Universe, which begins with Man of Steel. This film introduces a version of Superman that leans heavily into themes of identity, alienation, and the consequences of power. Visually, it adopts a more grounded aesthetic compared to earlier Superman films, but it also incorporates large-scale destruction and CGI-heavy action sequences. The tone is serious and consistent within the film itself. But what's important is that it establishes a foundation that the rest of the DCeU initially attempts to build on. That foundation continues in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, which takes on the challenge of introducing multiple major characters while also setting up a broader universe. The film explores ideological conflict between Batman and Superman, but it also includes narrative elements designed to lead into future projects, including the introduction of Wonder Woman and hints at the Justice League. This creates a different kind of storytelling structure compared to Nolan's trilogy. Instead of focusing on a contained arc, the film operates as both a standalone story and a setup for future films, which affects how it ages because its narrative is partially dependent on what comes after. This becomes even more apparent with Justice League, which underwent well-documented production changes that resulted in a tonal shift compared to earlier entries. The film presents a lighter tone and a more condensed narrative, which contrasts with the darker, more serious approach established in previous films. Later, Zack Snyder's Justice League offers an alternate version of the same story, with extended runtime, additional character development, and a tone more consistent with the earlier films. The existence of two different versions of the same narrative highlights one of the key factors in how the DCeU ages. It does not have a single, unified presentation. Instead, it reflects multiple creative directions over time. At the same time, the DCeU expands into standalone stories that vary significantly in tone and style. Wonder Woman focuses on character-driven storytelling and historical setting, while Aquaman embraces large-scale visual spectacle and fantasy elements. The Suicide Squad shifts again into a more stylized and irreverent tone. This variety allows the DCeU to explore different genres within the same universe, but it also means that there is less tonal consistency across the overall body of work. When we look at rewatch value, the differences become more noticeable. The Dark Knight trilogy, particularly The Dark Knight, maintains strong rewatchability because of its dialogue, pacing, and thematic depth. The films are structured in a way that rewards repeated viewing without relying heavily on spectacle alone. In contrast, the DCeU offers a mix of experiences. Some films are highly rewatchable due to character and tone, while others are more dependent on large-scale action sequences that may not have the same lasting impact as storytelling-driven moments. Visually, aging also plays a role. Nolan's Trilogy relies heavily on practical effects, real locations, and grounded cinematography, which tend to remain consistent over time. The DCeU, on the other hand, often incorporates extensive CGI to achieve its scale and scope. While this allows for more visually ambitious sequences, it also means that certain effects may feel tied to the technology available at the time of release, which can influence how they are perceived years later. Cultural impact is another major factor. The Dark Knight in particular had a significant influence on how superhero films were approached, emphasizing realism and thematic complexity. Its impact extended beyond the genre, affecting how studios approached large-scale storytelling. The DCeU, meanwhile, represents a different kind of influence, one tied to the era of shared cinematic universes. It reflects the industry's attempt to build interconnected storytelling on a large scale, even if the execution varied over time. So when we bring all of this together, the question of which age better depends on what criteria you prioritize. If you're looking at consistency, narrative cohesion, and a clearly defined beginning, middle, and end, the Dark Knight trilogy stands out as a more stable and complete body of work. Its grounded approach, practical filmmaking, and contained storytelling contribute to its longevity. If you're looking at ambition, scope, and variety, the DCeU offers a broader range of tones and styles, even if that comes with inconsistencies. And that's really the core of this debate. One is a fully realized trilogy with a singular vision. The other is an evolving universe shaped by multiple creative directions over time. So now I want to hear from you. Which do you think aged better, the grounded, cohesive storytelling of the Dark Knight trilogy or the ambitious, ever-changing DCeU? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe to Multiverse of Mayhem, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next breakdown. Stay chaotic, stay informed, and remember, the multiverse is mayhem. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.